Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Pittsburgh Sports Memories podcast. In this episode, we are going to be talking about the top moments in Penguins playoff history. My name is Tim Hannon, and with me, as always,
I'm Steve Wirt.
And so for my money, there's not a whole lot in sports that tops playoff hockey. It's captivating, it's exciting, it's filled with drama. I don't know. I just if I was picking my top sporting events, I mean, playoff hockey's up there. The Olympics, the World Cup of soccer. I guess the Super Bowl has to be up there, Steve. But I don't know. Playoff hockey to me is right up there with anything else. What do you think?
It's definitely exciting. It's like its own season. It's like you have the regular season, then you have like the playoffs, and they're two very different things. The NHL is kind of weird like that. So it's the only sport, maybe basketball, but like where the playoffs are just so different than the regular season. That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Hockey is unique in that way where it's like the regular season kind of almost means nothing once you get to the playoffs.
Yeah. Seriously, yeah.
Well, and here in Pittsburgh, we've certainly been blessed over the years to have a lot of playoff moments. In fact, in the past 30 years, there's only been one little stretch of 4 seasons where the Penguins did not make the playoffs. That was in the early 2000s. And other than that, they've been in the playoffs pretty much every year since 91. And of course, they've won 5 championships during that time and made a lot of other deep runs. So lots of moments to pick from. I wanted to do a top 10. I couldn't limit it to 10, so I'm going to do a top 15. And even with that, I have some honorable mentions that didn't make the list. So some honorable mentions before we start. Peter Sikora calling a shot in Game 5 of the 2008 Stanley Cup Finals. The Penguins were down 3-1 in that series to Detroit, and if the Red Wings score the next goal, that's it. They win the Stanley Cup. But Peter Sikora tells NBC he's going to save the season, and he ends up doing that with a goal in the third overtime. So that was memorable. Of course, the Penguins went on to lose the next game and lose the cup anyway. So maybe that's why that didn't quite make the cut. But that was a cool moment. Luc Robitaille in '95 against the Capitals. That was another case where the Penguins were down 3-1, and if the Capitals score the next goal, the series is over. It's in overtime. But Robitaille scores in overtime, and this time the Penguins actually come back and win the series in 7 games. So that was kind of a pivotal moment. Michel Briere beating the Oakland Seals for the series clincher in 1970. That was significant because it was the first time the Penguins had ever won a playoff series, and it was an overtime goal. But I doubt very many people remember the big series with the Oakland Seals.
Oh yeah, the Oakland Seals. Who could forget them? Yeah.
Classic team.
Yeah.
And then one last honorable mention I had to throw in here was Brooks Orpik beating the Islanders with an overtime goal in Game 6 in 2013 to end that series. Significant because it's the one and only time they ever got the best of the New York freaking Islanders. They will not be on this list anywhere because there's never gotten the best of them.
Well, that one time in 2013.
So those are some honorable mentions. Let's jump right into the list. And let's start with number 15. It's Gino.
And it's a one-shot game. Malkin burrowing is out. Oh, my word! Evgeny Malkin, spectacular for the hat trick. Not a one-goal game anymore.
And in 2009, the Penguins make that run to the Stanley Cup, and Malkin really carries the team on his back during that run. He ends up winning the Conn Smythe Trophy, and in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Carolina Hurricanes, I mean, Malkin almost single-handedly just wins that whole series. And the Hurricanes, I think it's hard to remember now. They came into that series on quite a roll. They had this goaltender named Cam Ward who was shutting down everybody, and that goal that you just heard there. That was Game 2. Malkin had a hat trick in that game, and that goal was his third goal, and it was just unbelievable. He skated around the net, and he basically like flips the puck over his shoulder and over Cam Ward's shoulder, like backwards. And you kind of heard the announcer react there. It was just like at that point they had no answer. It was only game 2, but really that was the end of the series. Cam Ward was not going to recover from that, and the Penguins end up sweeping the Hurricanes and advancing to the Stanley Cup Finals.
I remember that was like just such a blowout series. It was it really wasn't much of a series except for the Penguins like totally killing the Hurricanes. Wasn't Bill Cowher was like on the Carolina side of things for that, wasn't he?
Yeah, they had some thing where like it was you'd sound a horn or ring a bell or something, and everybody's like, "Oh, Cowher's a traitor because he's ringing the bell," or whatever the thing they did. It was one of those things like, who really cares?
Well, Malkin showed him.
He did. Take that, Bill Cowher. So number 14 on the list is the time that our general manager completely lost his marbles.
The new looks, goes in front to Brown. He shoots and scores. Oh, what a play again by Lemieux. You ain't nothing but a hound dog. Robbie Brown. Another power play goal, and Lemieux has 7 points on the night.
And they're chasing Robbie Brown around the ice right now because he celebrated the goal. I guess he's not allowed to do that. Now Hextall comes out, takes a shot at Coffey.
After that goal was scored, Robbie Brown really did not react to too much. Hextall chased him all over the ice.
Yep. So this is 1989, the Patrick Division Finals, a.k.a. the second round of the playoffs. Penguins are playing the Philadelphia Flyers. The series is tied 2-2, and the Penguins just explode in Game 5. Mario Lemieux, who was questionable to even play in this game because he had gotten injured in Game 4, he has a hat trick, Steve, 7 minutes into the game. He has a hat trick. and midway through the second period, the Penguins have an 8-3 lead. Penguins right winger Robbie Brown then buries his second goal of the game past goaltender Ron Hextall of the Flyers. And when Brown scored a goal back then, he used to do this like celebration with his arm. Steve, I don't know if you can sort of like describe.
It was like a windmill. You have it right there. Yeah, it's just like he would like swing his arm around like he was strumming a guitar, I guess is the best way he could describe it.
That's a good description, yeah.
Yeah, and Ron Hextall kind of took exception to that. So
yeah, Hextall kind of already a pretty ornery guy even when he hasn't given up 9 goals. He just sort of decides he's had enough of the Penguins being happy about beating the crap out of him. And he literally chases down Robbie Brown. I mean, it wasn't a taunting thing. I mean, it was just Brown's little goal celebration that he always did. And he didn't even get into his windup, and Hextall is like after him. He's right on his back. It's a surreal scene watching the goaltender chase Robbie Brown around the ice. Hextall's thrown out of the game, and he's replaced by future Penguin Kenny Reggett, who eventually shuts down the Penguins' offense in Game 7 of that series and wins the series for the Flyers. But just a memorable, unbelievable scene from the guy who's now running our franchise.
And I think Hextall still the first goalie to score a goal in the NHL?
He was, yeah.
Yeah, so he was a pretty good goalie back in the day. But Kenny Reggett was, for some reason, had the Penguins number that year. I remember that series because the Penguins would not beat the Flyers in the playoffs till, 2009? 8, 9?
Yeah.
So, but, yeah, for whatever reason, Ron Hextall, he just had enough. He had enough. He was kind of like you said, like an ornery goaler. Like if people would try and screen him in front of the net, he would take his stick and like hack on their ankles and the back of their legs and stuff.
Yeah.
Like he was kind of like a Billy. Who was that guy? Was it Billy Smith for the Islanders? Used to do that too. So he was kind of that kind of ilk.
Yeah. I mean, the Flyers have had a lot of, thugs over the years. But a lot of them, like Scotty Hartnell, guys like that are more in like the vein of like a Biff Tannen kind of thug, like, hey, butthead. And Hextall, I always said Hextall was more like the like Longshanks from Braveheart, like that scene where they're like where he's like telling them to fire the arrows, and they're like, but sir, we'll hit our own men, and he looks at,
oh well, we'll hit theirs too.
We'll hit theirs too. That to me, that was Hextall. He was that guy, and now he's our general manager. So. It is what it is. Moving on to number 13 on the list.
Around the boards for Francis. Hardy tries to knock it down. Stevens reaching for the puck. Messier is there. He's got it. He's tied up by Murphy. A shot. Score!
This is 1992. The Penguins are looking to repeat as Stanley Cup champions, but they have to face the team with the best record in the league that year. It's the President's Trophy winning New York Rangers. And in game 2 of that series, Adam Graves of the Rangers takes a baseball bat-like swing at Mario Lemieux and he breaks his hand. It's the most unfair BS ever. The Rangers say it was an accident. The league says it was an accident. It wasn't. It just wasn't. There's no reason to swing at a guy's wrist. If you're hacking at the puck's on the ice, not at waist level. It's a huge controversy. Even Weekend Update on Saturday Night Live dives into the controversy.
Well, the verdict is in, and the Rangers' Adam Graves did not deliberately slash Pittsburgh Penguins' Mario Lemieux, causing a broken hand for Lemieux. The jurors are said to be flying back to Simi Valley today.
OJ joke. That was Kevin Nealon.
It was Kevin Nealon. It's actually a Rodney King joke. But
Rodney. Oh no, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. But close enough.
2 years before OJ. Yeah.
Right, 2 years before OJ. But yes, that was the joke du jour in the early '90s was Rodney King. So yeah, it's a huge controversy. The league actually eventually does give into the pressure, and they do suspend Graves after like a game or two. Then they decide all of a sudden that he needs to be suspended. But who cares? Because the Penguins are down the best player in hockey, and the Rangers can easily win without Adam Graves. So New York takes the next 2 games in the series, and it really feels like all hope is going to be lost. This is going to be so unfair. They're going to win because they took out Mario. But Ron Francis steps into that number 1 center spot and saves the series and the season for the Penguins. In Game 4, Francis scores 2 late goals to force overtime, and then he wins it in overtime with that goal you just heard. And that was at the Civic Arena. Phil Bourque said that was literally the loudest he had ever heard the crowd at the Civic Arena after Francis scored that goal. It's the spark that the Penguins need, and the Penguins do not lose a game for the rest of that season. They go on to win their next 10 games, and they capture their second Stanley Cup.
Have you ever heard, you don't have the audio to the end of that game, do you?
Which one?
Of the elimination game? For the Rangers?
No.
Because they're chanting it. They chanted at the end.
Oh, in the 1940.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. They said it's as loud as even when because the Islanders always did it to the Rangers, and they said it's louder than, it was as loud as the Islanders ever cheered. People were just going 1940. It's just,
yeah, I missed that. I really missed that chant. That was a good
we
one.
can 1994. 1994.
Yeah.
It's getting there.
To it.
Hey, we're almost 30 years. We're getting there.
So the Penguins go in to win the Stanley Cup that year, in large part thanks to that series-saving kind of play there from Francis. Speaking of winning the Stanley Cup, here is moment number 12 on our list.
Kunitz to the outside, got it back to Schultz, and a shot went wide. Rebound off the boards. They score! The Penguins have scored. It is Hornquist. A bounce off the boards was shaken in, and Hornquist, who has not played a lot in the game, made the most of the time that time, and it's 1-0.
I miss Doc.
Well, I guess once NBC lost the NHL, that was the end of Doc's career. Although I think he retired a year before.
He retired anyway, yeah. So what you just heard there, that was the 2017 Stanley Cup Finals. The Penguins are in Nashville for Game 6, and they have a chance to win the Cup. But the Predators are really tough at their arena. They've won both games at their arena in this series, and their goaltender, Pecorine, does not give up goals very easily when he's playing it at home. And in fact, the game is scoreless. It's 0-0 with only 95 seconds left in regulation. But Patrick Hornquist, who was so good at being that kind of like that net front presence that the Penguins had lacked for so many years, he puts in a rebound. It gives the Penguins a 1-0 lead, and with it, their 5th Stanley Cup.
Is that the one that like kind of bounces off his back? Or,
Off of Rene's back? Or
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a weird goal. It's not, yeah. And like, I never thought much of, I know, like, I don't know. I never thought Pekka Rene was all that good, but hey, that's just me. But
he was all right, but I mean,
against the Penguins, he wasn't good. They always seem to score a ton of goals against him. I know this game he didn't give up too many, but wasn't the other game like he was giving up like 5 or 6 goals?
The game five was in Pittsburgh, and he actually got pulled out of that game because I think it was like 5-0. But when they played in Nashville, they were just really hard to beat, and the Penguins won all the games in Pittsburgh, and the Predators won all the games in Nashville. And I think everyone thought Game 6 is in Nashville. This is going to go to a Game 7. And you know, I think to Matt Murray's credit, you know, he kept them off the board the whole game, and you just kind of needed a bounce.
They had that weird goal that got accidentally disallowed. Yeah.
Yep. So, but Hornquist is the hero, and the Penguins end up winning the Stanley Cup. So that was number 12. Number 11 on the list is this moment.
Crosby, Kunitz, and Guerin on here. Penguins win the draw. Center point to Letang. Shot, score! It was deflected in! Chris Letang shot the puck! The Penguins have won in overtime! And ladies and gentlemen, Elvis has left the building. Chris Letang!
I think this one could have been higher on the list. And I think that it's one that people kind of tend to forget about. So 2009, the Penguins are trying to return to the Stanley Cup Finals. They're trying to avenge that loss to Detroit from the previous year. But in the second round, they run into a powerhouse Washington Capitals team led by Alexander Ovechkin. The Caps take the first 2 games of the series at Washington, and those are hard-fought games. I think Crosby even had a hat trick in the second game. But the Capitals just have more offense than the Penguins do. And now Game 3 in Pittsburgh is in overtime. And if the Capitals score the next goal here, that's it for that 2009 team. I mean, it wouldn't have eliminated them, but they go down 3-0. And that's I don't know what the exact stats are, but it's pretty much like 99.9% chance that the series is over. I think the numbers are when a team's down 3-0, I think 4 NHL teams have come back, 1 Major League Baseball team, and no NBA teams.
Hey, you know who one of the NHL teams that came back from 3-0 against?
Yes, yes. We're not gonna mention them because we said we weren't gonna mention them the rest of the episode. But I mean, that was a huge deal because again, the Capitals go up 3-0, and this whole 2009 run is over right there in the second round. But the Penguins, they win an offensive zone faceoff, and Chris Letang takes a slap shot from the blue line. It beats goaltender Semyon Varlamov, and the Penguins go on to win that series in 7 and ultimately win the Stanley Cup later that spring.
Is Varlamov the one? No, was that another Capitals goalie who was like, "Oh, I'm not afraid of the Penguins. I'm afraid of a bear in the woods" or something.
Yeah, I can't remember if that was him or the Flyers goalie.
I think it was. He's like, "Are you afraid of the Penguins?" No, I'm afraid of a. He's like a Russian goaltender too. He's like, "Oh, I'm afraid of a bear in the woods." It's like, okay, it's a Russian thing to say. It's like, okay.
All right, number 10 is a memorable one for sure.
Here are the fans. Mario's on the ice now. Back to the point, Desjardins. Mario blocked it. Lemieux heading up ice. Here he comes. Mario Lemieux. Hang on. He scored! You're gonna love
it. In 1997, Mario Lemieux announces he's retiring when the season ends. And it's kind of similar to Ben Roethlisberger's impending retirement for the Steelers last year, because the 1997 Penguins, just like the 2021 Steelers, are not a very good team, but they still managed to kind of squeeze their way into the playoffs. And then just like the Steelers, they get boat raced in the first round of the playoffs. And the Flyers, they're looking to sweep them here in Game 4 at the Civic Arena. So everyone knows, okay, this is Mario's last ever home game. So very dramatic kind of scene heading in. And the Penguins end up playing really their only good game of that series. And they have a 3-1 lead late in the game. And now everyone wants Mario to score a goal. People are chanting his name. They're going crazy every time he comes onto the ice for a shift. And then finally, at 18:56 of the third period, Mario gets a pass from the legendary Ian Moran, and he's one-on-one with goaltender Gar Snow, another future Penguin, and he beats Gar Snow for the goal. It's such a dramatic moment. There's people crying. There's just a flood of emotion for all the great years that Mario gave the city. And when you watch the replay of this, there's a long pause after that goal, and they're panning through the crowd on the TV broadcast. And one thing that you see are a lot of people holding babies. And, that was like a weeknight game. And why would you bring a baby to the arena for a game that's probably going to end at 10 o'clock at night, way past that.
Because you want to pay $30 for a seat for an infant?
Right. Like, why would you do that? And I really think it's because people wanted to be able to tell those kids someday that you saw Mario Lemieux play. You don't remember it, but you were there and you saw Mario Lemieux play hockey. Because I've never really seen that before at a sporting event where they're panning around the crowd and people are not only have babies, but they're like holding them up so they can see like the play. And I think that was why. And I think that's just a unique moment in Pittsburgh sports history where, again, the only thing I can even remotely compare it to is that Cleveland Browns game where Ben had his last home game last year. Just the drama of that and the emotion of that, a Pittsburgh legend playing his last game. So very cool moment. And it was his tip of the cap to the crowd scoring that goal.
And the babies were there to see it. What year? Well, you're 97, so all those people are like, 20-some years old now?
Right. Yeah. But they were there. They saw it.
Yeah,
so,
there you go.
Okay, let's go to Hockey Night Punjabi for the next call.
Phil Kessel, Basmune, slotted with the shot. Braden Obi, the gun go Pittsburgh Penguins. Jet the game. Bonino the goal. Overtime, jet the goal. Pittsburgh Penguins to win the Eastern Conference Finals.
In 2016, the Penguins are again locked in a tough second-round matchup with the Washington Capitals. And this is, 2016, that was the year that the Capitals are finally going to break through. They had the best record in the league. Ovechkin's finally going to win a Stanley Cup. But it's not going well for the Capitals because the Penguins have a 3-2 series lead heading into Game 6. And they have a 3-0 lead in Game 6. However, the Penguins blow that 3-goal lead, in part due to a really bizarre series of delay of game penalties, which we talked about in our top 20 mistakes episode. And so now the game goes into overtime, but that HBK line, as I've done so many times that year, saves the day. Nick Bonino, who the Punjabi guys love to say his name, he scores a goal. He sends the Penguins to the Eastern Conference Finals. And we played the Hockey Night Punjabi call, but Mike Lang actually had a really classic line at the end of the series. He said all the President's men couldn't put Humpty together again, referring to the fact that the Capitals had won the President's Trophy and couldn't get past the second round like they never could back then. So that was a great moment for sure.
That's where I get all my Penguins and hockey news is, Punjabi Hockey Night or whatever. Punjab, yeah.
Well, those guys kind of became like celebrities. I think they even invited them to the parade that year. Remember that?
Yeah.
So they were kind of local heroes.
That was a weird one. I mean, who knew hockey had such an international flavor? Who knew it was so big in India? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I guess so. Obviously, somebody's watching it there. So
yeah.
Okay, number 8 on our list.
Over to Nedved. Final rush here. Nedved going to Zubov. Here he comes. Slap shot. Where is it? Was blocked. Gets it back. Goes to Nedved. Fake a shot. Now the man went down. Shoots it to the net. He scores! The Penguins win in overtime! The Penguins win in overtime! And ladies and gentlemen, Elvis has just left the building. Peter Nedved and the Penguins tie the series in the greatest game maybe in the history of the Penguins.
So that's a pretty big statement there, maybe the greatest game in the history of the Penguins. So this is 1996, and guess who the Penguins are playing in the playoffs? It's the Washington Capitals. And the Capitals have a 2-1 lead headed into Game 4 in Washington. They have a really good chance to take control of the series here if they can win Game 4. And it turns into just a really bizarre kind of game. Mario Lemieux, in the second period, he instigates a fight and he's thrown out of the game. I mean, I don't know when before or after that you ever saw Mario not only get into a fight, but instigate a fight and get ejected for it. Penguins head coach Eddie Johnston, he gets hit by a flying puck, and he's on the bench with like a towel on his head with blood coming out the whole rest of the game. But most strange of all, the game goes into 4 overtimes. No one can score. The game heads into the wee hours of the morning. Penguins goaltender Kenny Reggett, the guy who had beaten the Penguins back in '89 with Philly, he's just magnificent in this game. He stops 53 shots, including a penalty shot in one of the overtimes. They actually awarded the Capitals a penalty shot because I think it was Chris Tamer for the Penguins had like knocked the net off of its moorings while one of the Capitals guys was kind of charging in. So that was like an automatic penalty shot. And Reggett stops that. Finally, Peter Nedved ends the game with a goal in the 4th overtime, 6 hours and 37 minutes after the game had started. And the Pens kind of use that momentum to go on to win the series in 6. And to this day, it's still the 4th longest game of the modern era.
Wow. I forgot about Eddie Johnson getting hit in the head in this game. He stayed in there though, like the tough trooper he is. How did Mario come off the bench or something? Is that why he got instigating, or just like how do you get kicked? Like that's the only reason you really get kicked out, right? Is if you come off the bench to fight.
I think it's one of those things where if both guys don't drop the gloves kind of thing too. I think you can get instigating for that. Right. So like if you're just laying on top of a guy pounding him on the ice.
Oh jeez.
And that, it may have been that kind of a situation.
Because remember people used to come off the bench and fight, and like then that's when they brought in like that's an automatic game misconduct, and I think they actually like suspend you for a couple more games after that. Because but wow, it's not as long as that other game, but
yeah, that one didn't make the list. The Penguins Flyers 5 overtime game, because that did not have such a happy ending, but. Yeah, weird that in the span of 4 years, the Penguins were literally involved in 2 of the 4 longest games of the modern era. So, but that one, like I said, had a happy ending.
He waits, he throws the pass, and it's intercepted! John Polamalu at the 40, 35-30!
Steelers versus Ravens is the best rivalry in all of pro sports, and now that series has been chronicled in Pittsburgh versus Baltimore, the unofficial history, an all-new book from the Pittsburgh Sports Memories podcast. Relive all the fierce battles and exciting moments from this amazing rivalry. There were legendary plays like Troy Polamalu's pick six and the immaculate extension, and there were crazy incidents like Joey Porter chasing Ray Lewis into the parking lot, or the Ravens putting a bounty on Hines Ward. We cover all of it, including some stories you may never have heard. Buy a copy for yourself, or get one as a gift for the Steelers fan in your life. Find it on Amazon or see the link in the show description of this episode. And thanks for supporting the podcast.
All right, number 7 on the list is also a dramatic moment in Penguins history.
Stevens fired it back off the board. 3 big plays on this shift by Stevens. 3. Straka trying to get by. He does. Plays it across. Score!
So we actually did an entire episode about this goal. We'll link it for you on our website. But here's the short version. The Penguins, they've declared bankruptcy. The team's in a complete financial mess. No one's really sure of what the future holds, and there's a very real chance that the playoff game on May 2nd, 1999 between the Penguins and the New Jersey Devils could be the final ever game in the history of the franchise. That was literally a plausible scenario heading into this game. The Penguins are way overmatched in this series. They're the number 8 seed in the playoffs. The Devils are the number 1 seed. Jersey is trying to eliminate the Penguins here in Game 6. But Jaromir Jagr, who had not played much in that series, he had a bad groin injury. He wills the Penguins to victory. He scores a late goal to send the game into overtime, and then he wins the game in overtime, as you heard there in the audio. And it's significant not just because it saved that series, which the Penguins shockingly win in Game 7, but there are many people, Jagr included, who believe that the Penguins would not exist today had he not scored that goal. And it's too long of a story to go into here. So again, go back and find that episode we did on that. It's a pretty fascinating story and an interesting argument. That goal literally saved the Penguins.
Just blame Howard Baldwin. That's the easiest. That's how you sum that up in one sentence. It is weird that like rarely does something that happens on the field or during a game actually saves like a team financially. It's normally really doesn't work that way. So it is kind of unique in that respect, I guess.
Yeah, and I think you could argue that didn't really happen here. But again, it's an argument that can be made, and we talked about that in detail. So again, if you haven't heard that episode, go back and listen. I would highly recommend that one. All right, number 6, we're going to once again go back to the 2009 playoffs.
Scramble draw comes to the point. Rafalski shoots. Knocked down in the net. Scramble. Lidstrom shoots and a tremendous save by Fleury. They've done it. The Penguins have done it. Sidney Crosby and the Penguins have won the Stanley Cup.
The Penguins and the Red Wings, they're battling for the Stanley Cup for the second straight year, and it all comes down to Game 7 in Detroit. Max Talbot ends up being the hero. He scores twice. Penguins have a 2-0 lead heading into the third period. And, Detroit, they were just way too good of a team to get shut out. And so I remember between that second and third period just thinking, okay, if we could just keep them at bay for 20 minutes, right? They're going to score a goal, and they did. Because again, they were that good. You weren't going to just keep them off the board, but if we could just kind of put some space between the first goal and the end of the game. So sure enough, it's 2-1. It's in the final seconds, and the Red Wings win an offensive zone faceoff, and now they have a chance to send the game into overtime. Darren Rafalski takes the shot from the point. Marc-Andre Fleury makes the save, but the puck rebounds to some open ice to his right, and here comes the captain of the Red Wings, Nicklas Lidstrom, arguably the greatest defenseman of all time, with a wide open shot at the net. Fleury makes a diving save, and the horn sounds, and the Penguins win the Stanley Cup. It's really become an iconic moment, Fleury making that save.
Yeah, you can't argue that. It's just I knew going into that third period when we had a 2-0 lead, I was like, please don't make this into a 20-minute power play for the Red Wings. And sure enough, the Penguins did. It was literally, did Chris Osgood see more than 2 shots that whole period? That was crazy. And remember there used to be a building in Pittsburgh where they had a mural of all the iconic sports moments of the 70s, and they had Mazeroski in a home run, Mean Joe, Mario. If they were to redo a mural like that with the more modern moments, wouldn't you think this would be one of Fleury making that save? I think that would be one of the things you would put on that mural, wouldn't you?
Oh yeah, you're right. It's become that iconic now that
you would have that the San Antonio catch. Obviously, maybe Johnny Cueto dropping the ball, or let's go with Russell Martin hitting a home run. I don't know. So something like that. Kenny Pickett throwing touchdowns. I don't know.
Fake Kenny Pickett fake
sliding.
Yeah, that would be the mural.
There you go. We should commission an artist to redo that. Tragically, the lady who did that died on Flight 800.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and then they tore. I think either
they tore it down. Yeah, they tore it down. Why? We keep everything around here except for that.
Yeah. That was. Yeah, that's too bad. And you're right. That would be fun to redo that with, like you said, kind of an updated version of that.
Well, when I get my millions, I'll commission an artist, and I'll have to find a building, I guess, too. But
well, if you have millions, you could just buy whatever building you want and put it on there.
I'll get it declared a historical landmark, and
Perfect.
then they won't be able to do anything about it.
Good plan. Good plan. Okay, number 5 is the single most improbable moment, I think, in Pittsburgh sports history.
Hines looking back for Gilmore. Taking over on the play is Robert Lang. He's got a trigger. Here's Kasparaitis. Risky one. He shoots and scores. The Pittsburgh Penguins have won the series in overtime. Darius Kasparaitis. And ladies and gentlemen, Elvis has just left the building.
This is another one that we did a whole episode on. Not really this goal per se, but that kind of magical run in the 2001 playoffs where Mario had come out of retirement. The Penguins are playing the Buffalo Sabres in the second round. They're in Game 7 at Buffalo, and they're in overtime. So the next goal wins the series. One of these two teams is going to go to the Eastern Conference Finals. The other team is going to go home. And you have Hall of Fame players all over the ice. You have these brilliant goal scorers like Mario Lemieux and Jaromir Jagr and Dave Andreychuk. And then you have Penguins defenseman Darius Kasparaitis, a guy who played 443 games in a Penguins uniform and only scored 17 goals during that time. You also, in net for Buffalo, have arguably the greatest goaltender of all time, a guy named Dominik Hasek. But in overtime, Kasparaitis somehow beats Hasek to win the series. As I said, I really do think, Steve, it's the most unlikely, improbable. You know, if you had to bet on anybody, if you were doing odds at the beginning of that overtime on who was going to score the goal to win the series, Darius Kasparaitis is on the bottom of that list for sure.
Well, yeah, I love Dominik Hasek too. He's one of my favorite goalies of all time, and it's just funny that but hockey's like that though. It's like. It's all in the playoffs. Sometimes it's like Max Talbot. Like, who would have picked Max Talbot to score 2 goals in Game 7? Like, you know, in Game 7, sometimes it's like a very unlikely person that scores your game-winning goal. So,
yep, that's the beauty of not only sports, but like you said, hockey and playoff hockey. You just see that, you know, the unlikely hero, the person, the thing you didn't expect. And again, going back to what we said at the beginning of the episode, that's why we love playoff hockey, is stuff like that. When we did that episode, we played this next clip. You know, we talked about Darius Kasparaitis was just beloved here in Pittsburgh, and this was him about 2 minutes after he scores the biggest goal of his life, being interviewed on the ice.
Is this the best moment of your hockey career so far?
You know, I don't realize I scored a goal. Honestly, I don't know what happened. I just put it in, but it just kind of, I'm still in the fog, you know. And I just joined a rush, and I didn't even know who passed to me. I just put a puck on the net, and I own Dominik Hasek because I scored one against him before.
You own him.
That's just great.
Stan Savran. I love the Stan Savran ever.
Yeah.
Get well soon, Stan.
Yes. Yeah, and that, you know, and that wasn't Kasparaitis being cocky. That was him being facetious. And you know, like knowing like full well that he was not supposed to score a goal against Dominik Hasek in Game 7 overtime. You know, and just having fun with it in the moment. So again, that's why we love Kasper. That and many other reasons. All right, number 4 on the list is another unlikely hero.
Left point, go to Batisov, back to John McLean. McLean left point. Batisov shoots it, deflected, right in. Peter Angelo save, rebound. Stastny stopped by Peter Angelo. I don't believe that save, neither does Peter Stastny. He can't believe the save that Peter Angelo just made on him as Frankie Sparkly. Now that maneuver there to stop and rob Peter Stastny. He should get 5 to 10 for that.
Yeah, this is 1991. And in 1991, the Penguins are a franchise who, in 24 years of playing hockey, they've never advanced beyond the second round of the playoffs. But this is finally their year. They win the Patrick Division for the first time ever. There's a lot of hype and expectations as they enter the first round of the playoffs against really what should have been an inferior New Jersey Devils team. But the Devils really outplay the Penguins for the first part of that series, and they have the Penguins on the brink of elimination in Game 6 in Jersey. And so now, not only are the Pens down to their final game, they're also without their starting goaltender, Tom Barrasso, who had been injured. earlier in that series. And their backup is a guy named Frank Pietrangelo. And I think people forget because of this play. But back then, Pietrangelo was not a goaltender you ever really wanted to see come into the game. He wasn't really that great. A lot of fans really didn't like him. I mean, if he came into the game and gave up a goal, people were just all over him. You know, he was just a guy that you definitely did not want out there to try to save the hopes of the season. And in this game, the Penguins, they have a 2-1 lead. The Devils have a power play, and Hall of Famer Peter Stastny gets a rebound and has just an absolute wide open net. He shoots the puck. Somehow Pietrangelo dives over to make the save. Steve, I've seen that play 100 times, and every time I watch it, even though I know it's going to happen, like my brain instantly thinks it's going to be a goal because it's just going to be a goal. Like I don't understand how it wasn't a goal. It's unbelievable that he made that save. The Penguins go on to win the game. They go on to win the series, and they go on to win their first ever Stanley Cup. And Pietrangelo for sure is a one-hit wonder, but man, what a hit that was! And that play is so iconic in Pittsburgh that it has a name. It's called the save. If you say the save, you know that's Frank Pietrangelo. Everybody knows what you're talking about. So that was a huge moment. And again, I can't watch that replay and not think it's going to be a goal, even though I know it's not.
He literally had the whole net to shoot at. And it wasn't like he didn't like just shuffle it along the ice. He actually lifted the puck a little bit. Like Stastny didn't just like softly try to tap it in. He really put like a little wrist shot on it. And it was a nice save. It was like really a mistake too, I think. Didn't he turn over the puck? He actually created his own like problem. If I remember correctly from Peter, didn't he like turned it over or something?
Yeah, another there's Pietrangelo giving up another big goal.
Yeah.
Had he not made that save. Like I said, his reputation in Pittsburgh, everybody remembers him fondly. And it's just funny how time does that. And that one play does that because the game before this, you go up and ask Penguin fans, Frank Pietrangelo, you're not going to get a positive response.
He becomes like, it's weird how he like transforms just over diving but sometimes if the right play at the right time, you know, just he's like so beloved and Barasso's so not so beloved. So
that's a good point.
I don't know what to
kind
tell
of funny
you.
how that worked out, huh?
Yeah, and Barasso's the better talent, but maybe personality played into it too. So
for sure. All right, number 3 on the list.
They'll drop the puck. It's free. Out right side, Murphy shooting. Save made rebound on the view. Hey! Shoots and scores! Mario Lemieux and the Penguins lead 5-4, and you'd have to be here to believe it.
You really would have had to be there to believe it. Game 1 of the 1992 Stanley Cup Finals. I really think you could argue it's the greatest game in NHL history. The Penguins and the Blackhawks both come into that game. Neither team has lost for literally a month. Like literally, neither team had lost for a month. They both had just run through the conference finals with a sweep. They were both on a roll, and this game is an amazing back and forth battle. The Blackhawks go up 3-0. The Penguins battle back. Jaromir Jagr has just an unbelievable highlight reel goal to tie the game in the third period. And now the game ticks down to the final seconds, and it looks like we're just destined for overtime in this back and forth battle between these two great teams. But hold everything, with 17 seconds left, Mario Lemieux blows past defenseman Steve Smith, who was a very good defenseman, Steve Smith. Smith takes him down. They call him for hooking. So now the Penguins get a 5-on-4 faceoff in the Chicago zone. Ron Francis wins the faceoff, drops it back to Larry Murphy. He shoots the puck towards goaltender Eddie Belfour. Belfour makes a save, but Mario's right there, scoops up the puck, buries it into the net, and that's it. The game's over. And Steve, what I remember about this game, I remember I was watching it in my kitchen, and I remember the feeling I felt when Mario scored the goal was disappointment. And I know that sounds weird, but I'll try to explain. So imagine you were watching like an epic movie or an epic series of movies, like maybe like a Star Wars trilogy or something, and the whole thing's building up and building up and building up, and it's all coming down to this final showdown, right, between the good guy and bad guy. And then imagine like the good guy just, I don't know, takes out a gun and just kills the bad guy and they roll credits. It was like super anticlimactic. And it was kind of like, oh, okay, he's just better than everybody. Like all the suspense was gone. And then the Penguins ended up winning the series in a 4-game sweep because all the suspense was gone. It's like, oh, this is okay. It's like, imagine Tiger Woods in his prime playing golf against like a bunch of 5th graders who are just learning to golf, and Tiger's maybe just kind of letting them, oh, you guys are keeping it close. But then if he wanted to just play his game, he would just crush them. Right. And I feel like that's where Mario was at this point in his career. And, it's like there's 17 seconds left. Oh my gosh, we're going to have this overtime now. And Mario's just like, no, I don't think I want to play overtime tonight here. Penalty, face-off, goal, game. Just because he wanted to.
Well, I think it was more like, okay, let's look back here just for a moment. Okay, so they have a face-off in the Chicago zone on a power play. So they have Ron Francis taking the draw, right? Ron Francis has how many goals and is in the Hall of Fame, correct?
Yep.
He wins the face-off back to Larry Murphy, who I believe is, top 5 scoring defenseman of all time? and in the Hall of Fame, too. Who takes a shot. Eddie Belfour. Is Eddie Belfour in the Hall of Fame? I know he's a pretty good goalie. He was a really good goalie. But Eddie Belfour's problem was he didn't, stop the puck he gave up a rebound, and he gives it up to Mario, who's, one of the best players ever. So, I mean, it wasn't all Mario, but yeah, it was just like you said. It's just like Mario's just pulled like a Michael Jordan or something. I'm really good and I'm kind of better than everybody. Here you go. Oh, okay, let's go home.
and the only reason they had that power play face-off is because he
created it. Yeah,
another really good player, Steve Smith.
Yeah,
and created that whole situation. And Mario said on that goal he felt like he was kind of fortunate because him charging towards the net, the defenseman that was playing at the point, or not the defenseman, the guy that was playing the point for Chicago, he was just by himself at the point. So if Belfour gets that puck and can kind of shuffle it out to the guy, he has a shorthanded breakaway. But again, Mario, he knew what he was doing, obviously. And again, it just here, I'm going to win the game. And again, I just felt like, oh, okay. I mean, that's cool. I'm glad we're going to win the cup again. But I kind of was hoping for more of a fair competition, and it's just okay, I guess he's just better than everybody.
I'm happy when it's unfair to our advantage. It doesn't happen that often, so you just got to enjoy it sometimes when you have the best player on the ice or the field or whatever. Sometimes you just got to enjoy it, enjoy the show. Because I've always been on the other end of that. Oh, Tom Brady's just really better than our defense all the time. It's just, and there's nothing you can do about it. I think it's the same kind of thing. It's Mario Lemieux's just better than you. Sorry. It's no offense, kind of like how Malkin was in that Carolina series. It's sorry, Carolina, you're pretty good, but Malkin's just that much better than you guys. So
that's a good comparison to Brady, killing us in AFC championship games. But I think there, it's you knew from, the first quarter that okay, he's just going to kill us. Here, it's man, this is really even back and forth. Blackhawks had a 3-0 lead in that game. This is going to be an amazing series. And then when he scored that goal, it's oh no, it's not. It's not going to be an amazing series. It's going to be over in 4 games, and it's not even going to be close because he's better than everybody.
Well, who the backup goalie was in this series was
Hasek.
Yeah. And if you watch Game 4, Hasek, that game could have been a 7-0 blowout if Keenan doesn't make the change to Hasek in that game. But even Hasek ended up giving up a late goal. I mean, it just, the Penguins were too good that year. They were just really better. The Blackhawks were really good, but the Penguins were that much better. That 92 team is probably arguably one of the best Penguin teams of all time.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right, number 2 on our list.
Now it's Sheary. That one came off Stallberg. It's Schultz working it back in deep. Fresh from the bench, it's Crosby. Crosby on Kunitz, a shot.
So back to 2017, the Penguins are looking to repeat as Stanley Cup champions. They've made it all the way to Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals, where they're taking on the Ottawa Senators, a team who no one really expected to get this far, but has done so on the back of a veteran goaltender named Craig Anderson. And it's just a classic Game 7. It's back and forth. It's really tight. The game goes into overtime. No one scores, and now it goes into a second overtime. And you want to talk about the high drama of playoff hockey. Here you have 20 minutes of whoever scores the next goal plays for the Stanley Cup, and then no one scores. So now you have another 20 minutes of whoever scores the next goal plays for the Stanley Cup. In the second overtime, it's another unlikely Pens hero. It's Chris Kunitz, who beats Anderson to send the Penguins to the finals, where they ultimately win their 5th cup. And I had remarked on social media earlier in that game that I had forgotten that Kunitz still played for us. And I was being half jokey, but I literally did kind of forget that he played for us, because at that point in his career, he really didn't log a ton of ice time. And when he did, he was just totally invisible. And so for him to get that goal, and it wasn't even a clean shot. Crosby fed him the puck, and he did not get a clean shot, and the puck kind of fluttered. And I think that's why it caught Anderson by surprise. It went over his shoulder, and it ends up being the goal that wins the series, and it wins the Prince of Wales Trophy for the Penguins. Just an amazing, dramatic Game 7 overtime. I mean, you don't get much better than that, Chris Kunitz.
Yeah, it's kind of like another one of those, unsung hero kind of people. And Chris Kunitz's job, throughout his career, I mean, he scored some goals, when he was more in his prime, but he was always on, Crosby's line to go in the corner and dig the puck out for Crosby so that, Crosby could kind of do his thing around the net. So Chris Kunitz, really wasn't a goal scorer per se. He was more of a forechecker and, dirty work kind of guy. But I liked him. I mean, he did it well.
Yeah, especially by that point in his career, right? Like you said, and when he was playing on Crosby's line, back in the early 2010s, you would have expected him to be out there and potentially score that goal. But by 2017, he barely even played.
Well, he didn't really fit in. This is, what's his name? Yeah, because he's the new coach. And yeah, he didn't really hear Sullivan's system. He's not necessarily a speed guy, especially at this point in his career. So
Right. So my memory of that game, I distinctly remember being in my backyard between the first and second overtime. I went to take my dog outside during that intermission, and it was all dark. And I was so on edge, I remember that I literally had trouble opening the door. My hand was shaking. And as I stood out there, it was all dark, it was all quiet, and a reality kind of hit me. And this was a weird thing to think in the moment, and a hard thing to think in the moment. As soon as I went back inside, I was either going to witness one of the greatest moments in the history of my favorite team, or I was going to witness one of the worst moments in the history of my favorite team. And there's literally no way around that. And then a second thought hit me, why am I so invested in this? Well, why do I care so much about the outcome of a sporting event that I have no control over? But I do, and I did, and there's no way around that either. And I think when Kunitz scored that goal, and I kind of erupted in pure elation. And at that moment, I think that's, that kind of answered my question. That's why I care so much, because even though the terrible moments are really tough, man, the moments like that you'll remember forever, I guess that's what makes it worth it. And when your teams give you those moments like the Penguins have for so many years now with 5 Stanley Cups and all these great moments we're talking about, that's what makes it worthwhile.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the antithesis to maybe one of the other teams in town that are, let's say, considered professional. But I mean, imagine trying to make this moments of the last 40 years with the Pirates. You couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, you would be hard pressed,
Yeah.
You'd be like, remember that time Johnny Cueto dropped the ball? Yeah.
Yeah.
Even Pitt football up till last year was kind of well, I mean, I guess they had 13-9 and they beat Clemson. Even Pitt football had more than the Pirates have had. So that's saying something. But good for the Penguins.
But you make a good point there about the Pirates, Steve, because again, I think it's a good it's a good reminder how fortunate we are to have teams like the Penguins and even the Steelers who've had so much success. Because there's a lot of sports fan bases who, they've had nothing but heartbreak. Look at like Buffalo fans, for example.
Yeah.
With the Sabres and the Bills, they just had another one this last year with that playoff game in Kansas City. Just they've had all the tough moments and they haven't had a lot of the great moments to fall back on. So it's a good reminder that we're very fortunate and very blessed in some of the teams we root for here in Pittsburgh.
Even like Kansas City, or like you said, Kansas City, it took 50 years finally for them to get one Super Bowl. And then, they've lost. Yeah, they lost in another one and then didn't even make it. And then Cincinnati finally makes a Super Bowl after all these years and can't pull it off. And the Reds haven't won a World Series since the 90s. So if you look like teams that are kind of comparable, like you can't compare Pittsburgh to like, New York or LA or even Chicago probably, because those are much bigger cities. But, when you compare them to, cities like, like I said, Cincinnati and Kansas City and Buffalo, it's like we definitely have had more than our fair share. This will be tough to do, like, a Buffalo Sports Memories podcast.
Yeah, we run out of material a little quicker, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And we love you, Buffalo fans. I literally always root for your teams when our teams are out of it, because I'd love to see you guys, win a championship in at some point, especially in football. So, all right. So that brings us all the way to the number one item on the list, and who else could it be but number 66?
Here's Lemieux. His center penalty coming up. Look at Lemieux. Oh, my heavens. What a goal. What a move. Lemieux. Oh, baby.
We talked earlier about that 91 season. The Pens get past the Devils thanks to that Frank Pietrangelo save. They have won the next two rounds as well, and now they find themselves in the Stanley Cup Finals for the first time ever against a plucky Minnesota North Stars club, a team that had actually finished the regular season under 500. But, like Steve said earlier, playoffs are a different animal. They get hot in the playoffs, right? That's no better example of that than the 91 Minnesota North Stars. And they come into the finals with a lot of momentum. And in fact, they take game one. And so now the Penguins really need something to get them back into the series in game two. And they get that from Mario Lemieux. He takes a pass from Phil Bourque, and he's 1-on-2 against both Minnesota defensemen. It's a play that no one should ever attempt. I mean, if you were coaching kids hockey and you showed that play, you would want to burn it into their brains. Never, ever, 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 under any circumstances, try to take on both defensemen and the goalie, because, something bad's going to happen. Just dump the puck in so your guys can make a line change or whatever. But again, we talked about Mario was kind of superhuman, and he decides to go in and take on both defensemen, and he darts between the two guys. He puts the puck between one of their legs, and then he beats goaltender John Casey as he's going down to score maybe the greatest goal of his career. I had to put it at number one. It's not a moment that won a series or was in overtime or anything like that. But I feel like it's kind of the moment in Penguins history that turned a moribund franchise into really one of the most successful sports teams in North America over the past 30 years. I mean, if you think about it, before this play, the Penguins are a team that just has bad luck. They have tragedies. They have financial difficulties. They have all kinds of just nothing goes right in the first 24 years. And then the 30 years after this play, they win 5 Stanley Cups. They're hugely popular in Pittsburgh. They have all kinds of success. So I just kind of felt like that was an appropriate moment to put it number one for that reason.
Yeah, whenever they show Mario like career highlights, this is always like top 1 or top 2. That and the 5 goals, 5 different ways, and it's just it's definitely is like main highlight. And I mean, it wasn't all smooth sailing after this, but it definitely started the Penguins on their winning ways. Like I remember at the beginning you said that since this time they've only missed the playoffs 4 times?
Yeah. It was that little stretch. It was 2002 to 2006.
Yeah.
Those seasons, and then they've made the playoffs every other year. From 91 to present, they've made the playoffs every other year.
Yeah, so I mean, and like they had that rough patch with the in '99 with almost going bankrupt again, but it's just the stability of the franchise has really improved so much and become such a fabric of the community, and that's good for Pittsburgh and it's good for the Penguins and good for us fans. Gives us something to watch between till Steelers training camp when since the Pirates don't ever do anything anymore. But yeah, I mean, it's Mario's, a legend. And like I said, like when I commission my mural, when I make my millions and whatever I'm going to make my millions in, so and I commissioned my mural for that Mario will be on there. He was on the original mural too. So you got to have, maybe he'll be an owner this time, like holding a Stanley Cup with Crosby and Malkin and Fleury and all them. So
there you go. Yeah, that place should have been the statue, not Richie Pilon, but that's another story altogether.
And I always confused John Casey and Edgar Casey. Edgar Casey was a psychic from the 50s. Too bad John Casey wasn't psychic. Maybe he could have seen that coming. I don't know. Yeah.
He did not have a good series. And that was really, I mean, the North Stars, that was a big reason they were in the finals was because of Casey. And he had no answer for Mario. He ended up playing for the St. Louis Blues like 5 years later, and Mario scored 5 goals in a game against him when he played for St. Louis. So I think that guy couldn't wait to get out of the league, so he wouldn't have to ever play against Mario Lemieux ever again. So that's our list. I hope it gets you pumped up. I know the playoffs are starting this week, so hopefully that gets you all primed and excited for the upcoming playoff season. Thank you so much for listening. Please check us out on the web. Check us out on Facebook or Twitter. Please tell your friends about the show. Give us a rating on whatever podcast service you listen to. All that stuff helps people find us. We'll catch you next time.